Hello and welcome back to Scouching's 2019 NHL Draft Recaps. Today we're looking at the Chicago Blackhawks, and last year the Blackhawks had an absolutely massive value draft, and this year was a little bit different, and I'm a little bit curious as to what the thinking was behind a lot of these draft picks. But without further ado, let's dive right in. The Chicago Blackhawks won the lottery this year and ended up with the 3rd overall selection, and they took just about as big a swing at that pick as you possibly could take. Kirby Doc went 3rd overall to Chicago. Now, I was one of the bigger Kirby Doc fans out there. When I watched Kirby Doc play, I came away extremely impressed with just how easy he made the game look. His playmaking ability, his shot, his skating ability, his skill, and all of that combined with his size just felt like something extremely rare you don't come across quite a bit in the NHL in the draft. I think this is a big upside swing. He had a very long cold streak, he battled a few injuries during the year, but when he was on, he was one of the hottest players in junior hockey, and I think if he can capture that ceiling, this pick makes a lot of sense for Chicago. It's risky, but I think at the very worst, Chicago has a very interesting offensive center here one day. I will say that this probably wouldn't have been my pick at 3rd overall, but he certainly deserves a spot in the discussion, and the fact that they came down on this side of the pick, I'm not particularly surprised considering Chicago does tend to recently swing on a lot of upside. And when you look at all of the players available in this range, Doc likely had more upside than anyone here when you consider all of the factors about his game that are at such a high level. Then at 43, the Chicago Blackhawks took Alex Vlasic. Now, I saw Vlasic play quite a bit this year, and I see the appeal. He's a really big defender who skates pretty well. But he's one of these guys who is hyped up as a good defensive defender who makes a good breakout pass, but whenever I would watch him play, his defensive impacts were extremely negative, even relative to his extremely talented team, and I really never found his breakout passing to be that great. Now, he could be a decent transitional defender who can move the puck up the ice, but at 43, there were many other players in this range that I would have taken. Matthew Robertson at 43 would have been a fantastic pick for Chicago, but taking Alex Vlasic, you're swinging on him capturing what might have been there 5% of the time when I watched him. It's not impossible, but I've seen plenty of players with his profile and his reputation just turn out to be a lot of smoke and mirrors when all is said and done. We'll see what happens, but I really was not a fan of this pick for Chicago. But then at 105th, they took a player that might have been a decent swing at 43 in Michel Tkachuk. He played pro hockey in the Czech Republic, which is not a joke of a league, and I really liked what I saw out of Tkachuk during the season. This is a good value pick at 105. He's a skilled winger with some decent size and can skate pretty well. He already is playing against men in a good league, and I'm really interested to see where he goes from here. And speaking of players playing in men's leagues, they took Finnish forward Alexi Sarla with the 123rd pick overall. They also went out and got his brother Alexi Sarla from Carolina, which is a nice combination to have. I liked Alexi Sarla from what I saw, and he certainly produced very well in the Finnish men's league this season. That's certainly a very promising sign, and I came away somewhat impressed with a lot of what I saw of Sarla. He's got nice hands for a winger, he's a good scoring option on a pretty mediocre Finnish Liiga team, so as that team gets older and more experienced, I would expect him to play a more important role. I'm really curious to see where he goes in his career. The Blackhawks then used a 6th round pick on a goaltender playing midget hockey, but he saves a lot of pucks, so we'll see. I don't know, he's going to Colorado College, which is a fine NCAA program, so time will tell, but goalies are goalies, and that's really as far as I'm willing to go with goaltending. But then with their last pick in the draft, the Chicago Blackhawks took Cole Moberg, who, as a defenseman, had tremendous value in this slot. He was involving himself in team offense extremely well. When goals were scored at even strength, he was getting points and primary points more often than most defensemen that I tracked in the Canadian Hockey League. And while I never came away super impressed with his skating, he certainly has a nice shot from the point, and I think his offensive tools are underrated. He's a real project pick, and it'll take some time for him to develop, but he could be an interesting pick for the Chicago Blackhawks overall. So if you've watched Scouching Report videos before, we're going to take the same rating system and translate it over to these videos. The number's going to indicate the general potential that I see in the group of players a team drafted, and the letter's going to indicate the likelihood of reaching that potential as a whole when all is said and done. And with Chicago, I have to give them a strong 2D. Now, Kirby Doc could be a phenomenal hockey player if everything goes right for him. It's a big swing for Chicago to take him over some of the names they passed on, but even I understand the risks behind this pick. Vlasic in the 2nd round is at the very least a big reach, but getting guys like Tkachuk and Sarla and Moberg later on, I think one of those players could play in the NHL one day, and I think that someone like Tkachuk is very undervalued based on where they took him. The goaltender, he stops a lot of pucks, he's going to college, we'll see what happens. Oh, and he's also 6'6", and that helps. So with that, we've completed the Chicago Blackhawks. Our next subject will be the Philadelphia Flyers. If you liked the video, you can click all the buttons you see below me so that you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could support us on Patreon, where you get access to private chat rooms, spreadsheets for drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as plenty of other goodies. Or you could pick up some merchandise from the Scouchwear shop. All the links are in the description below. So that's it for this one, and I hope you join me where we break down the Philadelphia Flyers.